Hello there, welcome to round 2 of the Asian Le Mans series. I am Nadia Nash greeting you from down under. Yes, it is the series' first visit here to Australia and we can't be happier. And of course, it is a privilege to be racing here specifically at the Ben Motorsport Park. It is the world's second longest permanent track. Now, it is qualifying sessions here today and the teams have had the opportunity to get to know the track a little better. They've had time to learn the track from free practice sessions. And of course, not only that, we are going to be the first event that is going to be running or racing the full course of the circuit. So that's going to be interesting to see. And also, Mother Nature has been keeping us on our toes. We've been seeing scorching sunny days to hazy skies to persistent rains and winds. So it is going to be interesting to see how the teams perform under those conditions and whether or not they have learned the track enough, because it is a new circuit to the series. And of course, one thing is for sure, the teams are here. They're ready to put up a fight, and I say, bring it on. And I shall welcome to the show right now a man who is always up for a good motorsport battle, who needs no introduction. Graham Goodwin with us, our series commentator. Graham, are we happy to be here in Australia?
Unbelievably happy to be here in Australia. You said it's the first trip to the Ben, the first trip for the Asian Le Mans series down under. It's the first time in 20 years that we've had international sports car racing in this fantastic country. 20 years ago, just down the road, 90 minutes down the road in the beautiful city of Adelaide, the race for 1,000 years around the streets there. Now we're back at this amazing new facility, just a couple of years old, but we're going to be the first, as you quite rightly say, to get the opportunity to put 4 hours, any racing at all indeed, around this 7.7 kilometre circuit, second longest permanent circuit in the world after the famous Nürburgring.
Great. Now, of course, we are here in Australia. The past couple of days, it's been a mixed bag of weather. We've seen all kinds of weather. But how do you think that's going to be for us tomorrow and also today for qualifying?
You're right, something like a 20-degree spread, 42 degrees 2 or 3 days ago, down to about 20 degrees and heavy rain yesterday. Temperature on its way up in the high 20s today. Outside the garage here, it's blisteringly warm. It's going to get warmer again tomorrow, over 30 degrees. That's going to be particularly challenging for the guys in the older prototypes where they don't have a cooling system in there. So let's wait and see how that affects them over what's going to be a grueling 4 hours.
Right, of course. And of course, we have to talk about the lineup of drivers. Who should we keep our eye on?
I'm sure the crowd here are going to be looking out for, there's a fair number of Aussie drivers, including some real local heroes. The big names that stand out, the late addition of Shane van Gisbergen, the black car, the team New Zealand car we've actually got before there that is going to be a big name to watch. He's won here in V8 Supercars on the shorter track. Nick Cassidy in that car as well, Roberta Merry in the 36. But beyond that, we've got a cast of champions from around the world. We've got a cast of champions in the Asian Le Mans series, but we've got a 25-car grid absolutely stacked with talent.
That is going to be interesting. Of course, the list of quality drivers is going to go on and on, of course. And funny you talked about Shane, because we might have the opportunity to have a little chat with him, hopefully, if we find the time right before qualifying sessions start. But of course, you are not going to be with me. Unfortunately, you will be joining Jeevan Salvanathan up in the commentary box. So, Jeevan, how are you doing? Are you ready for qualifying sessions?
Hi, Nadia. Great to be here in Australia. For the second round of the Asian Le Mans Series 2019-2020 season. I think endurance fans around the world have been waiting almost a year to come here to the Ben Motorsport Park. It's an important, significant day for the Asian Le Mans Series, as Graham pointed out, by actually being here in Australia for the first time in almost 20 years. That was the last Le Mans race that happened on the 31st of December 2000, that famous race of 1,000 years. I think the teams are ready. I myself, as you asked, am ready for it. And as you can see from the side of the screen, just under 10 minutes to qualifying now. Slightly different qualifying format than we've seen. Of course, being the second round, the first round, it was 2 15-minute sessions, one for LMP2, LMP2M and LMP3, and the other one for GT. Those are the 4 classes, of course, that will be contested in every one of these races. But this time round, we're going to have 3 qualifying sessions, and the LMP3s actually get their own 15-minute stint in the middle of this qualifying session as we look at some beautiful shots of this wonderful track. This track has only been open now for a year, and it has seen, as Nadia pointed out, some very important motorsport events. The 2018 Supercars Championship was here, the Ben Supersport. It actually started all in January 2018 with a cycling event, the ultra-distance cycling event, Revolve 24. Those are the types of events that have happened. But now, of course, this is one of the biggest, and it, as they pointed out, Graham and Nadia, using the full configuration, 7.77 kilometers, 35 turns. I can welcome Graham Goodwin into the commentary box. Graham, thanks for joining us up here. Have a look at this track. It's beautiful, right?
It looks like a puzzle, doesn't it? Like less than a track map, and an astonishing 35-turn layout. This 7.7 kilometer track, as we said just a moment ago, the second longest in the world, permanent racetrack after the famous Nordschleife in Germany. And the kind of times you're going to be looking for when we get into the LMP2 cars, so the 35 turns, are going to be, I should think, a couple of 3 seconds over 2 minutes and 30 seconds. That's something like a minute shorter than the Le Mans track, but it's a challenge. It has got a bit of everything. It's going to be particularly challenging in traffic, I think, as the quicker cars catch up to the GT cars. We're not going to have that today because we've got 3 qualifying sessions rather than 2. But so it's going to be a different qualifying format, and I think that in recognition of the fact that this is a completely different challenge for these cars and for these teams. One of the great things, though, is that none of these drivers have actually seen this circuit before.
Yep.
We've got the odd 1 or 2 guys who've practiced here. There's certainly a lot of simulator time being actually spent on the 7.7 kilometre track. A little later, I'm sure you'll see Jack Manchester's commentary on what the track here is like to actually deal with. But what I've been hearing is they're all pretty worried about traffic.
Yeah, it's very much a test run for the track itself, being just a year old, but also for these drivers coming in. No cars like this have been here. And I think how they actually negotiate Sector 2 is going to be very significant.
One of the changes here we're going to see is for the LMP2 tyres, a bit of a harder compound. I think what we're going to do is, in just a few moments' time, we're going to go down and listen to Nadia with Ben Maher, who is the representative from the Michelin tyre brand, partner to the Asian Le Mans Series. They're down in pit lane right now.
Right, we've got Ben Maher here with us. He is the director of Michelin Motorsport Asia Pacific. So just the perfect guy to be talking about the tires, of course. But before that, we're here in Australia for the first time. How are you feeling, for Michelin and for Asia Le Mans Series?
Actually, I'm taking care of the Michelin Motorsport activity lately at the end of 2019, and I'm very happy to be with Asia Le Mans for this brand new track experience at Ben. It's a brand new track. Nobody, at least by our side, we have no data, so it's really a discovering journey trip for us. We are happy to be here.
Right, it is new, everything is brand new here, so it's going to be interesting to know how your tires are going to perform. And I have been told that there are new tires. The P2 tires are new, so how is that going to perform on this track right here under these weathers?
Exactly. Thanks for the new P2 joining, and we are pleased to introduce a new tire here. For the first time in Asia Le Mans, it's kind of a semi-confidential tire for the first time to the series. Actually, these confidential tires will depend on the different conditions from different circuits. For example, for this circuit in Thailand Ben, and we bring quite the hard compound for the hot conditions, and same structure with Shanghai. So it gives us the consistency regarding the car setting up, but the compound could properly provide more the potential for the teams to push on this long track. So that's why I think give all the new P2s more powerful cars, more the chance to win and more place to play.
That's good to hear. If I was one of the drivers, the teams, I'd be happy to hear that. And of course, thank you so much, Ben, for joining us here on the show. And it's back to the commentary box.
Great to hear from Ben Maher there from Michelin Motorsport, one of the stalwart supporters of the Asian Le Mans Series over the last few years. And Graham, I think what Ben was talking about there is very interesting. A different proposition for these tyres this weekend.
Very much so. It is a completely different track surface, but in particular, it is the tight and twisty nature of this circuit. It's clearly pretty much baked hard in the summer sunshine. We've heard so very much to. There's so much we've heard about the climate here. But let's talk enough about the track. Let's hear from a man that knows it well firsthand.
Yeah. The best way to really understand the Ben Motorsport Park is to get into a car, and we had that opportunity. Jack Manchester with the Thunderhead Carlin Racing Team. Let's get on board with him and see what it's like.
Hi, I'm Jack Manchester. My Thunderhead Carlin number 45, Dallara LMP2 at the Bend in Australia for Asian Le Mans Series. Now on to start-finish straight. Here we go. Into turn 1. Probably getting near 300 before you brake heavy and hard into it. Into turn 2, slight lift. To 3, using all the camber you can to help slingshot and pull the car around. Coming up to a nice, fast, flat left-hander. Now we come to the first of the hairpins. Heavy braking, quite a late apex, and nicely on the power. Comes to 2 flat double lefts around the LMP3 car. Heavy braking into this kind of double apex left-hander. And lift, back on power, fight with the car around this corner, then you get into this really kind of a real fun part of the track through that flat right-hander, down to this great left-right section, really cambered, really carried quite a lot of speed through. Coming to this left section, you go a lot faster than you think you can, and now it's this long sweeping right-hander. This corner here can really be tricky, can really catch you out, blind crest. Now into a heavy braking again, one of the other places that you really need to stamp on the car brake. Out. Now into a real fun corner. Over the crest, down the hill, let the car run out, and then back for this really right-hander, and then a long left hairpin. They come up to a part way, a lot of runoff and road at the exit corners where the 2 tracks want to meet. It really gives you a lot of room. Another fast, blind right-hander, which is really good corner. And into a kind of it's 2 corners, but it's almost constantly turning. Little lift, back on the power. Come up to the final 2 corners. Down the gears. Second to last corner. Now we come up to the fast last corner. Little dab on the brakes. And then straight back on power to finish the lap. Catch all of the action of the 4 hours of the Bend live on Sunday.
Yes, that was Jack Manchester there giving us a look at the track, of course the beautiful track here at the Ben Motorsports Park. And just the person to be speaking to is the Managing Director himself, Dr. Sam Shaheen. Thank you for joining us on the show, and of course we are happy to be here. The Asian Le Mans Series is happy to be here. We want to hear from you. Are you happy as well?
I am absolutely thrilled that it's finally here. You know, this is world-class motorsport, world-class organisation, world-class series, and hopefully everybody concurs it's at a world-class venue. This is a wonderful track, and I'm absolutely thrilled to hear the testimony of the drivers already, and hopefully it'll continue throughout the weekend.
Right. And of course, we are the first to be using the full configuration, 7.77 kilometer circuit. And do you have anything to say about it? We want to hear from your side.
Yeah, I mean, this is not for the faint-hearted. This is an absolutely magnificent circuit. It's a highlight reel, and the drivers have to be at their absolute best to nail it. So anybody who qualifies well here is certainly going to earn it. I cannot wait for this qualifying session and for what looks like a magnificent race tomorrow.
Yeah, of course. We had to step into the shade a little bit because the cars are getting out there, and it's safer for us in here, of course. And we've got one last question for you, if you don't mind. Tomorrow, we're expecting to see a crowd. You're here for a couple of years now. The track has been here. And can you give us a little teaser of what we can expect tomorrow, the atmosphere and the crowd?
Yeah, I mean, Australia has always supported great motorsport, and this is world-class standard. This is brilliant motorsport. The long track is a very demanding track, very technical. Really, quality will rise to the top on this track, and that's for a sprint event. Add an endurance element to this, and you are going to see some very exciting, very interesting race, particularly in the second half of the race. Tyres and tyre strategy will be super important here, and like you said, drivers are used to long races, but on the second longest track in the world, they're in for a treat. I think everybody is in for a treat. The drivers, the teams, your spectators, and the viewers are in for something very special tomorrow. Can't wait.
So we heard it from the man himself. We're in for a treat today and, of course, tomorrow. Thank you so much, Sam.
My pleasure. Thank you.
Well, treat is the word, Graham, that was used there by Dr. Sam Shaheen. Great to hear, of course, his passion for what's going on here, but it's a really bitter treat, isn't it? I mean, there's some exciting bits on this track, but you really got to watch yourself as well.
You do. It's certainly a completely different test for the drivers all through. We're already, by the way, a couple of minutes into this 15-minute qualifying session.
Kicking off with the
now.
GTs.
This is indeed. This is turns 18 through 20. We talked about that, the run-up here. That's going to be a very... I'll tell you something, when you see that from track level, it doesn't look nearly that wide. I think that's going to be an area where you're going to see those battles coming in with traffic when we get into the race tomorrow really getting compressed. It's going to be an area where the P2 cars will be looking to get through traffic quickly, but probably unable to do so. It's somewhere where you can lose 2, 3, 4 seconds.
You're talking about, of course, Sector 2. This track is the 7.77 kilometers broken up into 3 sectors. Sector 1 turns 1 to 7. Sector 2 turns 8 to 24. Sector 3, 25 to 35. But a lot of the drivers have been talking about this. It's almost quite narrow in Sector 2.
It's very narrow in Sector 2. I had the privilege of being taken around in the Ford Mustang safety car they've actually got here, and that's pretty quick. And there you suddenly see what looks like a wide stretch of tarmac look altogether different when you're down there at kind of track level. For now, though, we're now 3 minutes in. Let's have a quick talk about who's actually out there in the cars. In the number 7 car guy, Ferrari, it's a new addition or returning man to the championship. Com Ledigo is aboard that. Ross Gunn, winner last time out, of course, with D-Station Racing in the 77 Aston Martin, the Aston Martin factory driver. Ferrari factory driver Davide Rigon in the number 27 Haboso Corsa car. The 2 Astra Veloce motorsports cars, the 16 and 17 BMW. Ziwei Lu in the 16, Jens Klingman will be in the number 17. Alessandro Pierguidi, FIA World Endurance Championship GT World Champion in the 51 Spirited Race car, our only European entered car in the Asian Le Mans Series GT class this year, of course. T2 Motorsports, we saw that car just a minute ago, and Rio Haryanto is aboard the Indonesian entered machine. And the guys who were possibly the unluckiest last time out, J-Lock ran in the lead for so long before a late race penalty. Andre Coutu from Macau is aboard the car we're looking at right now, the wailing number 88 J-Lock Lamborghini Huracan.
Now, as these guys start completing, they've already put 1 lap down. So we should be seeing some faster times in the next couple of laps. I can tell you now that Com Ledigo, of course, who used to race with Spirit of Race before, has returned back now. He's sitting in for Antonio Fuoco. What is the story there with Antonio Fuoco?
I think we're going to see Com Ledigo complete the season with this team. There's a further problem to come, of course, for a clash with the Asian Le Mans Series for a number of these drivers with a change in the World Endurance Championship calendar. That means that a couple of the Ferrari drivers...
At the Buriram leg, right?
Buriram. So we're going to see some driver changes in the latter part of the season, probably for the most part just for that race. But 10 minutes to go, and they are now deep into some of these cars, their first flying lap. And this is something you've got to get used to in endurance racing, particularly when we come to these longer tracks. It's a long time before you see a flying lap, and it's not many laps in 15 minutes you're going to get out of this. Something like a 3-minute lap we're looking for from the GT cars, and well, anybody with schoolboy or schoolgirl maths will be able to work out that doesn't mean there's going to be terribly many chances to do it. Of places where you can make an error, and there's no real time to pick up.
Talking of errors, as we just saw one there, a little bit of puff of dust that came off the side of that BMW. This BMW was actually off in free practice.
This is the 17 car, and James Klingman was the other car, actually, the 16 car that had a bit of a problem earlier. That one has been in woes Well, Shanghai woes coming along to woes here again, I'm afraid, with electronics problems. New electronic control unit delivered here this morning. They had a few problems with that one, but I'm hoping they've got that dialed out and we'll see some competitive lap times from the number 16 car, which is now out on track.
Well, I do think a lot of people have seen this track. They've seen what it's like. They've seen, of course, the different speed differentials of LMP2, LMP2 AM, LMP3 GT. And yesterday we were talking about how it's the GT class that might actually determine the position of this race.
Absolutely, because of traffic. We're now beginning to see those first lap times through, by the way. Davide Arrigon, it is to the top of the timing and scoring at 2:57.229. That will, of course, now stand as the qualifying lap record for the moment at least here, because these are the first time we've seen cars on the 7.7 kilometre track in competitive trim. Ross Gunn a couple of seconds off that. Jens Klingmann splits the two, so at the moment it's Ferrari from BMW from Aston Martin. They are the three cars that have completed the lap so far. Car number 88 has had the current lap that Andre Coutu is on deleted, so he will not score a flying lap for this first attempt for the Lamborghini. So the 88 car, their 309.475 will not stand, and I think he probably knew that, which is likely why he lifted off. So 2:57.229 for Davide Arrigon. That is 1.2 seconds at the moment clear of Rio Haryanto, who makes it a Ferrari 1-2 right now with the number 75 T2 car, and it's a 1-2-3 for Ferrari now because Com Ledegaard gets into the 56s, a 2:56.924. That's mighty quick for the reigning champions, of course, the number 7 car guy, Ferrari.
Well, that is a blinding Sector 1, 42nd Sector 1 there. Car Guy do need to get something from this weekend. They had a pretty clean sweep of the last year's season, 2018-2019. But this year's been a bit different for them. And of course, Shanghai, the first race, finished 16th overall and 4th in class, mainly because of these new Ferraris that are now contesting them.
Well, the Ferrari contingent had a bit of a nightmare, really, in Shanghai. Did have a number of instances where they hit each other. One of the victims of that was the Hub Auto car we're looking at here, Davide Arrigon. The team I spotted when we arrived here pretty comprehensively rebuilding the front end of that car. And he was lifting off there, so I wonder whether or not he's got a bit of a problem, or is there some strategy underway here. He was pushing on very rapidly indeed in the first part of that lap. I wonder if he knows that he's actually got a track limits issue on this lap. But that is Davide Arrigon, not up to full qualifying speed as we look at the 27 car.
Yeah, looks like he's nursing it around there, and 2:56.924 still the time to beat. Com Ledegaard in that car guy number 7 Ferrari has set that so far. We've got about roughly 6 minutes, probably about 2 laps on this huge track left for them to do. So it is getting tight in GT qualifying.
Here's the T2 car, the number 75, the Indonesian car at the moment. That car is off the front row, and off the front row by it's quite large gaps here for the moment, and that's gone wide again. So that's not going to help his campaign with the J-Lock Lamborghini just behind him. I say just a small error is going to have big consequences here, and I wonder if he was watching his mirrors a little bit too much there. So Rio Haryanto is not going to improve on this lap. J-Lock car goes by as he tries to get the Michelin tyres cleaned up for the T2 Ferrari.
Swiftly on the inside, and you were right saying this car here, the J-Lock Lamborghini, had the most terrible of times in Shanghai. We had such a great race for 3.5 hours, and then essentially had a penalty right at the end, and that put them down the order.
It did indeed. Gave the win to the Aston Martin. They knew that penalty, I think, was coming, so were perhaps being a little more conservative than otherwise they would be.
Oh, look at the heat haze there, Graham.
It has been blisteringly hot earlier in the week. We did, though, have, like I said in the lead-up with Nadia,
a slight downpour.
Well, slight downpour. It really did.
Well, it's an Australian epic downpour,
but
obviously.
It was 20 degrees cooler one day to the next. I mean, quite astonishing swing of temperature, and we're now back up to knocking on for 30 degrees today. It'll be a little warmer tomorrow for the race.
There is that beautiful winner from Shanghai, the D-Station Aston Martin.
Absolutely.
Do you reckon they would have been surprised with that win in the end?
I think they would have been delighted with it.
Happy with it,
I think they would have expected probably a more solid attack from the Ferraris, and that faded away pretty early on in the race, and that was pretty much self-inflicted, I'm afraid. The Ferrari can keep it on the island, then I think we're going to see things swing back in a different direction. But
Screeching
tire
through
screech there,
yeah.
not something we're used to hearing, and that might well be something to do with the surface of this track.
Well,
and
how
off
about that?
is the 75.
Now, we saw that car clipping and having a couple of problems at T2
gone around.
Motorsports. Rio Haryanto behind the wheel. Now, that's going to be a lot of pickup he's picked up from there.
That's
Must be.
ruined that run for him. So he'd gone around there, hadn't he?
Now, he has already put in a 2:58.462. That is currently putting him third in the classification behind Davide Rigon and Com Ledegar.
So pretty much a disaster at that point, but no one at the moment threatening that time. Looking to see what Ross Gunn can actually do here. Ross way down in 6th position at the moment. Lamborghini Huracan, by the way, has set a time, has come up to 4th position ahead of Jens Klingmann. So Andre Coutu up to 4th in the second row of the grid. So it's Ferrari, Lamborghini, BMW, Aston Martin, then the Spirit of Race Ferrari with Pierre Guidi. We're not really seeing what we'd have expected from Alessandro Pierre Guidi yet. And then the second of the BMWs rounding out the 8 GT cars we have here.
Well, back with Com Ledegar and the car guy Ferrari. Just saw a little bit of wobbles from Ross Gunn there, but so far no problems for Com. He looks like he is on a bit of a fly here. No, just as I said
stopping.
that.
I wonder whether or not he wasn't on a quick lap and was told the 51 car was coming.
And stopped, yeah.
And basically got out of the way there so that Alessandro Pierre Guidi could have a crack at it. If that wasn't a flying lap from Com, or if he was down on his delta, there'd have been no real reason why he would want to stay in the way of the 51 car, other than defending a lead in qualifying, which, to be blunt, the driving code doesn't really allow you to do.
Cautious start from all these drivers so far.
Tippy-toe stuff, is got to be said. We've already seen, though, just how tricky this track can be.
And I think for all of these GT drivers and teams, they would have been thinking about that, being the first class out on track today for competitive racing. Of course, there have been a couple of free practice sessions, which still, of course, produced some incident as well, but this is a different kettle of fish now.
Into the last 2 minutes, and just looking to where the improvements might come. One of them certainly might well come from Alessandro Pierre Guidi. Could we end up with the top 4 all being Ferraris here? And the difference between, by the way, the 2:56.924 and the quickest non-Ferrari at the moment is 1.7 seconds. That's quite a mighty gap.
So 6 of the 8 cars now have broken, we'll make that 7 of the 8 cars have now broken the 3-minute mark.
And it is indeed the Spirit of Race car that pops up in 4th. It's Ferrari 1, 2, 3, 4 at the moment. So 7 has pitted. That will be the end of the session for the provisional pole sitters. Roberto Corsa's 27 with Davide Rigon.
There he is.
He's still out there, but not, I don't think, at a pace where he's going to trouble pole position. Rio Haryanto, we saw having a torrid time on his last flying lap. Is going around, I think, for one more crack at this. Spirit of Race's 51 car still out there, having got a competitive lap time in. Then Andre Coutu is pitted. The Lamborghini will not be restarting against Klingmann. Is going more quickly than he has, as is the other BMW in the hands of Grey Lou. Way off the pace at the moment, I'm afraid, that car, some 20 seconds off, so not a competitive lap time from the 16 car. Ross Gunn has dropped down now to 7th position. He's 2:59.773. That's 3 seconds off here. Now that is quite a gap, but then remember as well, the length of this track does rather flatter the advantage of the cars ahead here.
So 17 seconds left, as you can see at the top of your screen, in this first of 3 qualifying sessions. New format for the second round. The LMP3s, if I'm right, should be out next.
It will be, but Davide Rigon is on a flyer here. He's just put in the fastest second sector of the race, and I think he's shooting for pole here. So we need to keep an eye on the 27 car, because this is some middle sector from Davide Rigon. Awful lot of bragging rights here amongst the Ferrari Pro drivers, of course.
And it's this sector 2 that we were talking about, which is the one of great concern to these drivers. Very narrow, but of course in qualifying, nobody to overtake. If you get a clear run, and it could work well, but that is looking like a very fast lap.
Another team, by the way, with a late driver change, local driver Leo Talbot, multiple championship winner in Am and Pro Am
In
classes.
for Morris Chen.
He is indeed for the car owner, Morris Chen, coming around to complete the lap. And just how close can this come to pole position? It was a 2:57.229, looking for a 2:56.924, and he takes 8/10 out of that. It's a 2:56.109. Davide Rigon goes to the top of timing and scoring.
Unbelievable.
With other cars still out there, that is a time that's going to look difficult to beat, but also improving right at the death. And up to third position, getting in the middle of the Ferrari. Jens Klingman goes up to third position in the Astra Veloce number 17. Ross Gunn improved his time, 2:59.284, but not his position. He will stay down in seventh position. And we're waiting now for the completion of the session with the Spirit of Race car of Alessandro Pierguidi on a reasonably quick lap here. It's due through any moment now. The 16 car comes through to complete the lap. Alessandro Pierguidi opts to pit, so he was not on a lap that's going to improve. I think that will be it. Rio Haryanto is not looking like he can improve that time. So at 2:56.109, Davide Rigon it is, pole position setter for Hobart Auto Corsa. They're looking to come back with a vengeance after what was not the race they were looking for in Shanghai. Back what seems like, well, it was indeed a year ago.
I mean, it seems such a while ago, but of course now the continuing evolving story. What was a great shot there was as Davide Rigon came across the line, we actually managed to see the car guy team. It was Kai Cozzolino, Takeshi Kimura, all looking in awe at the fact that their time had just been beaten.
It's that damn moment. Is what it was, but well, 2:56.109 is now, that is the lap record.
Yeah, Kai Cozzolino was smiling, I have to say. He's a very happy guy, but that is the new lap record. It's a weekend of firsts here in Australia, and we've just redefined that lap record, 2:56.109.
That is quicker than I would have thought, I have to tell you, and I think that we've got some cracking laps in from all the leading cars there. Jens Klingman, by the way, should actually get another mention here on the second row in that BMW in the number 17 Astra Veloce car. That was a 2:58.442, so just 200 a second quicker than Rio Haryanto, whose time, unusually in this session, came quickly, and then he had that torrid lap where we saw the car
where we actually saw,
run wide. And
just
then,
about to say that we've seen that was one of the only car that came out. And I think that J-Lock and Spirit of Race also put in some very good laps as well. Station Racing from Ross Gunn with a 2:59.284. And you're right, just Astra Veloce Motorsports with a BMW M6 with a 3:20.329 in the end. And so we're just about ready to show you that first GT qualifying session. Let's have a look back at the highlights.
Well, 15 minutes of GT qualifying and all 8 cars out on track immediately, with the number 75 T2 Motorsports car from Indonesia, the J-Lock Lamborghini, both expected to be in the hunt. It was Rio Haryanto that went quickly very, very early on. Looks like he'd be in the mix. The 17 BMW also with Jens Klingman, BMW factory driver at the wheel. Looked like he would be a force. And the returning champions, car guy, number 7 with new driver for them, Tom Ledegar at the wheel, who was going to be coming out on top. Car guy looked like they could challenge. Went to the top of the times very early on in the session. But the 27 car with Hobart Auto Corsa, Davide Rigon it was, very late in the session, managed to come through with what will be a new qualifying record, obviously, 2:56.109. Everything's new here this weekend. So there'll be new race lap records tomorrow without a shadow of a doubt. Remember, this circuit's configuration has not been used competitively at all before now. And to get the debut with a race of this kind of quality standing, and effectively, let's not forget, 4 races in one race is something pretty extraordinary.
Mixed class racing, it's the only type of motorsport that can bring you this kind of thrills, spills, and action. One last thought about that first qualifying session. After all the talk and after looking at the track, were you surprised that only 1 car came off the track?
Not really. They've had plenty of time, 5.5 hours of track time, albeit with a little bit of weather interruption for that. So there are plenty of opportunity to actually have some track time here around this circuit.
They'll be happy with that.
They'll be happy with that, but let's not forget, that was the pro drivers at the wheel. It's an altogether different prospect when you're here with you get the gentleman drivers in here. This is a terrifically difficult circuit to learn. I was massively impressed, by the way, with Jack Manchester. What we heard with him
on the
commentary. I had a conversation with Jack before he came into the studio, and he was reeling off those corners. Now, he is not yet a full professional driver, but he was reeling off those corners. He knew what he was going to be actually saying for at least a good half of that lap. So it is still an absolute test. It's a fantastic new facility. It is a technical challenge for absolutely everybody. If nothing else, it's a memory challenge. It's 35 corners. And trust me, those corners are...
exactly what I was thinking when we were looking at the onboard, how the track just kept going.
Yeah, sweeping right, sweeping left, double apex corners, flick-flacks, 18 through 20, blind crest at turn 12 into a sharp right, banked corners as well. You don't really get that from our camera angle, but one or two of these corners have got a bank to them. One or two have got a reverse camber to them. It is a massively challenging environment for the drivers. You want to see what Top Driver thinks about it, by the way. Have a quick look on Twitter at what Harry Tinknell in the Dallara was saying about this yesterday. Wise words from Harry, a man with multiple factory contracts in his pocket, including, by the way, and congratulations to Harry and to Richard Westbrook, just both of them named as the additional factory drivers for Aston Martin for Le Mans. He's mightily impressed by this circuit. I can't wait to see how it races.
Yeah, and he's got a lot of... And I know that specifically in the run-up to this weekend that you have been talking a lot about those turns in Sector 2 from turn 16 to 20. Flick-flack, you called it. It's basically a chicane, very narrow chicane, and the concern is going to be traffic through there.
Traffic through there, but as you heard as well from Jack Manchester, it is narrow, but it's also quick, and that's not necessarily a good thing if you're in the quicker car, because you can't get by, you're losing speed, and you're losing quite a lot of speed. Now, remember what happened at the end of the race in Shanghai last time, where the Dallara was catching and trying to find opportunities to actually catch the G-Drive car. Right there is somewhere where 2, 3, 4 seconds could be gained just by catching a car in the wrong place.
Yeah, absolutely. And once again, I'm sure you're aware of what happened in Shanghai. Thunderhead Carlin had a fantastic race. They were having some problems in the run-up to the season, I remember last year, and it kind of continued on for them as well with that.
It did, and to be blunt, it was a basic error by the team. They miscalculated.
Driver timing, right?
Driver timing, miscalculated. We were talking in commentary about them putting in Harry Tinknell pretty late in the day, 28 minutes to the end of the race, and that was not enough. There was some 6 minutes short. That was a penalty that was put out to them. They were dropped down the order, and the 26 car, the APR G-Drive car, took the wins. The Aris wins both in the Asian Le Mans Series with race wins there, and now in the European Le Mans Series and the Asian Le Mans Series. Pretty typically Aussie shot there, look. And good to see locals coming out here. It is an hour and a half out here, and of course with the extreme weather conditions that we've been seeing so much of on the international news, and I'll be talking a little bit about that in some more detail later in the show today and certainly tomorrow. You can see just how dry it has been here, just tufts of green around the plot there, Chief.
But Dr. Sam Shaheen, who we were just talking to earlier with Nadia, was saying that the motorsport community in Australia is massive. It might be a V8 supercar-based community, but they love their motorsport. They will travel hours to come out here to see this, especially with a brand new circuit that is looking like it's going to be really setting the mark. There are hundreds, well, there are a lot of racing circuits in Australia, but none like this.
Nothing like this, and the scene here, you're quite right, because we're so far away from anything else, really, has been pretty much self-contained, very Japanese in a way. You've got this very almost tribal feel to Australian motorsports.
Yes,
but it's becoming more international. And the pride that these guys are taking in being able to see their drivers and their teams in international motorsport with the likes of Mark Webber and Dan Ricciardo. But let's before we talk a bit more about that, though, let's go down to speak to the poleman. It's going to be down at Hub Auto Corsa. Davide Rigon is going to be down in pit lane with Nadia right now.
Sorry there. So can you guys hear me? I hope you guys can, because it's very important. We're talking to a very important guy right here, David Rigon. And of course, you did it in the very last minute. Tell us how it happened.
So actually, thank you. Was really in the last minute because my first lap I was not ready with the tires. It was the first time we put new tires in this weekend, so it was not easy to find the balance with the new tires. And then after that, my second lap, that was the quickest, I had an issue with traffic. But then after that, I was able to put really together on the last minute. Actually, guys, I risk a lot. It's a track that if you risk, you gain. Everything goes well. The car is difficult, but it was very, very fast. So very fast for qualifying, and now we need to improve for the race. Anyway, very, very happy. Thanks to Abba Auto, Ferrari, for giving us a good car.
Fantastic. So yes, you said it, you risked it, and the risk was worth it. Now we want to know what's your strategy going into tomorrow, 4 hours?
Of course, to work a little bit with the car to improve the rear stability. And nothing is a very difficult track, but the overtaker will be very difficult, even with the LMP car. And actually, it's a very physical track. And so let's do our best, and let's see if we're able to stay here for tomorrow. We will do our best. We have a strong team, strong car. Let's do our best to don't do stupid mistake, because here is very tough, and we need to be concentrated.
We hear you, so we'll be seeing you on the grid tomorrow, starting in pole position. Congrats once again. That was it. David Rigon, guys.
Thank you. Ciao.
Thanks, Nadia. Now, Graham, interesting words there from Davide Rigon, and he was talking about increasing or looking to ways to increase stability for the cars before tomorrow. You know these cars better than anyone, back and front. What could they do to make these cars more stable?
What it comes down to is setup. It comes down to setup. It comes down to how they use the tyres, how good a set of tyres he can give to his less experienced co-drivers. But particularly here, it's going to be that balance between getting the speed, the raw speed that the pro drivers can squeeze out of these machines, but not compromising comfortable setup so that the less experienced drivers can actually respond, particularly in traffic when it starts to get when it gets pretty tight. That is a gorgeous shot of the Viper Niza Racing Ligier, because it is going to be LMP3 next for another 15 minutes. I'll remind again, anybody just tuning in a little later than normal maybe, that it's going to be 3 15-minute qualifying sessions, and we're going to have 7 LMP3 cars, additional car here this weekend with a second entry for the Inter-Europol team. That's 4 cars for the Polish team.
Unbelievable amount of cars to be running at a weekend. But
it'll be 25 cars as we had in Shanghai, rather unusually, with 2 cars we had there not running. I'll explain why about those in a moment. 2 cars we didn't have running will be running. Inter-Europol is going to be the first one we see of those, the 14. The car that we're missing, by the way, that we've not seen so far.
FIS Team AI.
Indeed, the FIS Team AI car, I'm afraid, too damaged to run here this weekend. They'll be back for the final 2 rounds of the season.
That's right. It was Junsan Chen in Shanghai, 17 laps completed before he found himself halfway up one of the walls.
Upside down, halfway up one of the walls. And
very lucky that he got out of that free.
Look at this. This is a windmill, and this is actually providing the power for the systems at the marshal's posts.
Well, that's
so really
brilliant.
Sustainable technology here with Sam Shaheen's team.
Eco-energy.
Absolutely. And one of the other things to say about this, of course, is that's going to save them an awful lot in terms of the infrastructure required to wire up this circuit, because it's a lot of ground that's being covered. So all sorts of systems, that'll be PA systems, comm systems, lighting systems. You can see the circuit CCTV cameras there, all being supplied. It's pretty windy here, by the way.
Yep.
The planting regime that they've put in place, not yet mature, so there will be a lot more cover as this circuit kind of beds in. The 65 car there making its way to pit out. There'll be 3 Normas, and it'll be 4 Ligiers.
That's the big news, of course, in LMP3 this season, the introduction of the Norma M30 chassis. It used to be just Ligier JSP3s, but it's been a great battle so far. It was in Shanghai, looks set to continue here.
Of course, same engine, the VK50 engine in the rear of all of these little LMP3 cars. Should say, by the way, we've got a different LMP3 Norma in this session than started the week, because of the dramas in testing for one of the 2 Nielsen Racing cars. Number 3 car had a big incident out on track, and I think it is the black car you're seeing second in a row here is the number 3. They've actually combined, they've actually been successful with one of our other teams, Graf Racing, has loaned them the spare car that they've been carrying for the season thus far. So they've rebuilt their car around the second Graf chassis. So real teamwork there, real team spirit. The spirit of endurance is alive and well in the endurance, the Age of Le Mans series.
Now, in terms of drivers, Colin Noble and Garrett Grist are in the 2 Nielsen Racing 2 and 3. Garth Walden has been logged on as the number 14 into Europol car. And Douglas Koo is in Viper Nisa Racing number 65. That car on your screen right now.
That is indeed our Team Malaysia, as I like to call them, car, the 65. Let's talk a bit about Garth Walden, though, in the number 14 car. It's a brand new squad in the 14. Peter Padden and Garth Walden, both local Australian drivers, and both those men, by the way, taking part in our small prototype support race here. Both men very able drivers indeed in the little radical cars that sit somewhere way below these cars.
The Australian prototype series.
Indeed,
That's
they
right.
do. But Garth Walden is out there for qualifying. Colin Noble, we know all about Colin, race winner in the Michelin Le Mans Cup and always in contention in the European Le Mans Series as well. Garrett Grist, highly competitive Canadian driver in Europe and North America. David Drew has taken out the number 9 Graf Racing car. Ace 1 Valour Corsa dominated the opening parts of the race at Shanghai, and there's a change them too with David Fumanelli coming in, another very competitive driver indeed in that team that makes it an all-Italian lineup in the number 12 car. Nigel Moore, again, established star in the Age of Le Mans Series and a previous champion in LMP3 with Top-With Motorsports. He's out there in the number 13 into Europol car. So it's 7 cars, 15 minutes. What could possibly go wrong?
Well, one thing I wanted to ask you, of course, as we look at this beautiful livery on the Inter-Europol competition car, Inter-Europol have entered the Asian Le Mans Series last year and really set up their team very nicely. But, Graham, I'm going to be straight up and ask, exactly how many of these cars have Inter-Europol got?
They've got these 2.
They've got 2 LMP2s as well.
2 LMP2. In fact, I think they may have 3 LMP2 cars with a spare car. These cars, after the Asian Le Mans Series, the JSP3 Ligers will be put into super sub mode. They'll be doing some track day and training duties for the team because they're buying 2 of the brand new Ligier JSP 320s, the new for 2020 cars that we'll see in the Asian Le Mans Series next season. So in Europe in the European Le Mans Series, Michelin Le Mans Cup and the Michelin Ultimate Cup, we will see the new cars from 4 different chassis makers. But this has been a phenomenally successful little car, the JSP3, as indeed the Johnny-come-lately, if you like, in LMP3 is the Norma M30.
Oh, wow, how about that for Villebor Corsa?
That's, by the way, exactly the same place that Rio Arianto had a bit of a problem. So the number 12 car staggers back on in front of David Drew. And that was probably less close than it looked. Hoping that Alessandro Bressan saw David Drew coming there. But the bright yellow car, that's going to ruin that lap. It was not his flying lap, by the way. That was his establishing lap, but we'll be looking to get some heat into the Michelin tyres.
That was the car, of course, that was really leading the class in Shanghai with Alessandro Bressan, the same driver behind the wheel. They had a fantastic first 2 hours of that race.
In fact, we're in amongst the LMP2 AM cars for a short while as well. But David Drew in the French tricolour liveried Graf car. What next for Graf? From the European Le Mans Series to the Asian Le Mans Series, they've got all sorts of ambitions with a team that's been around in racing with this name, well, for something like 25 years, if I remember rightly. It might be longer than that. But the Graf Racing team, a solidly established name in international endurance racing and coming back to it in recent years in LMP2 and LMP3 and building up quite the customer base. Colin Noble is the first man to go through for the first flying lap, the number 2 car.
Actually founded in 1984. Bit of research there. That's a long time. 35
years ago, and they've been at Le Mans for many years since then. But Colin Noble at the moment is the man showing pace. He's something like 0.2 quicker than David Drew on that first sector. So it is, what is it going to be? Is it going to be a Norma? Is it going to be a Ligier? And if so, which one. There's some.
Well, I remember you commenting on in Shanghai that the Norma slightly different from the Ligier in that it was better at corners. It was better in the turns.
The Norma, if anything, is the straight line car. The Ligier
is the
more
car,
wieldy
right.
one in the corners, perhaps, and it's something of a tank as well. So it can actually battle around in traffic, perhaps a little better.
That's the difference between these two chassis.
It certainly seems to have been, to be blunt, the more reliable of the two over the long distances. We've seen some real pace from Normas that's not then been delivered. We've got a red flag.
Wow, well, that is...
And that is car 3, stopped on track out at turn 9.
Oh,
that would have been
Grist.
just after Garrett Grist actually started his flying lap. And
There
it
it
is,
is.
the car stalled on track. And you can see the all-black livery of that car. Well, that car arrived here. It was in the deep blue that it ran in the European Le Mans Series as the Real Team racing car, deliveried for testing duties. It was then brought back into service when the chassis of the 14 car, sorry, the original 3 car was damaged in a testing accident earlier in the week.
Now, that's pretty serious to have a red flag. I mean, it doesn't look like it's actually anything's happened to that car, but what do you, oil spill perhaps?
No, well, it could be anything. My guess would be probably electrical. There's a lot of systems been switched over between 2 cars, but it's already done a free practice session since the car was rebuilt. And I think actually got out for the session before that briefly. So they'll stop the session simply because it's on the racing line.
Yeah.
Simple as that. So,
well, as
fingers
it
crossed
stands right now, Colin Noble has put in, with just 1 lap completed, that 2:53.379 will stand.
well, it's not a flying lap, so it won't. It's not a qualifying lap. No one has completed a flying lap yet. So the reality here is we're looking for, if you like, a quick snatch back to the pits for the number 3 car. It's brought a red flag on that. There you go. Here comes the Ute. I do like to see Ute. So the Ute there will be taking the Norma back to the pit lane. Pretty certain, because that car brought out the red flag, that will be out for the rest of the session. Don't think that car will be allowed to rejoin. And then we're going to have, well, what could be as little as 6 minutes worth of track time.
High frenetic action in this second qualifying session.
And here's the point. It's that could be 1 flying lap.
Yeah, which is exactly what I was putting down in that if 1 lap is completed, whoever's at the top of that classification is going to be on pole.
Red flag is out. The cars will make their way around to pit lane. It's then going to be a matter of how quickly the car can be recovered. The clock is still running, and if that clock gets down to under 6 minutes, that will be 1 flying lap apiece, because it'll be 3 minutes on the out lap, and then 3 minutes to actually complete a flying lap. So it could be a one-shot deal here for these guys. And I'm looking up and down the timing and scoring screens at Colin Noble, David Drew, Alessandro Bresson, Nigel Moore, Garth Walden, Douglas Koo. That's a battle I want to see.
Yeah.
So, if you're
I think we were getting ready for it as well.
If you're going to make a cup of tea, do it now, because it could be quite a 3 minutes, really. So the clock is still kind of ticking down as we kind of look. Clock has now stopped, in fact, on 10 minutes. I apologise. So the clock we were showing you on screen, it'll be 10 minutes when we get back to it. So that could be, at maximum,
a couple of
3
laps.
flying laps.
Yeah.
3 minutes on the way out.
1 out lap, a couple of other laps.
So it's still, even despite that, that's not going to help the mental preparation of these drivers. We've got some pretty strong-willed guys out there, and it's a matter of, if you were in a kind of motorsport-type poker game, who would you want with the really good hand, and who would you want with a terrible hand, but
I just think that if Nigel Moore's sitting at that table, he's going to have something to say.
I would tend to think here, you've got Nigel Moore, who's an established star in LMP3, but I'm looking at young Colin Noble as well. Very much one of the coming men in LMP3, and I'm beginning to now interest the LMP2 teams as to somebody they might be looking for as a bit of a surprise package. You tested at the end of the year with G-Drive Racing in the Bahrain WC rookie test. Nigel Moore's already had some time in LMP2, and for that matter, back in the day in LMP1 as well. But then you've got Alessandro Bressan. You cannot ignore the pace that man showed
absolutely.
In the early parts of the race in Shanghai. David Drew has actually been very competitive. It's the quickest car in terms of their out laps. We haven't got a qualifying lap quite
And that was
yet.
a 2:53.379.
Gives us a nice chance, by the way, to look close up at the lines of this Norma M30. Needle nose on that car, as opposed to the flatter nose with the air intakes for the JSP3. The other thing to say, by the way, about this car and the Ligier, and for that matter, the Ligiers and the Oracle will see an LMP2 AM. These have no air conditioning system.
That's right. I was going to ask you about that. In these hot temperatures here in Australia, we've seen a 20-degree spread up to 40 degrees. I wanted to know, is there an extra event? Is there a regulation that would allow for some kind of cooling for these drivers?
The answer is, unless they've got a cool suit, there isn't. There is a regulation in very many international sports car races that talks about an ambient temperature gap. So in other words, you must keep the driver's temperature, and that car is clearly, by the way, going to the flatbed. That is done for this session, the number 3 car. So the Nielsen Racing team, you can see the body language of Garrett Grist.
Exactly, I was just about to say.
That body language is not a positive one, is it?
No.
So Garrett Grist, very, very challenging of himself, certainly expects a great deal of himself. He'll be disappointed with that, as will the team. They were working very hard indeed yesterday to get the various systems transferred from what remained of the rather battered number 3 car. Alessandro Breslan might regret parking that car there
in that heat. And look at these clear blue skies here in Australia.
There's more race fans on the way to see us tomorrow, so that shadow of a doubt. There'll be another A380 landing at Adelaide with coach loads of fans coming to the Asian Le Mans Series. There should be, really. For the, it has to be said, beautiful city of Adelaide.
Beautiful surroundings as well.
Absolutely. But terrible cricket team. That's for another story.
It's another story, a different program.
But that nice shot again down onto the Vipanisa Racing crew, ready to release the Malaysian liveried car. But the number 12 car is going to be cooking in there. Colin Noble, I think, a rather better idea. A little bit of shade, doors open on the Norma.
Just keeping the breeze coming in there. And if you have just joined us, this is the first qualifying session, or the qualifying session for round 2 of the Asian Le Mans Series 2019-2020 season, right here from the Bend Motorsport Park in Australia. We've already had GT qualifying. That brought up its own headlines, and it was Hub Auto Corsa to come through with the pole there. But in this second, there is a new format for this round for qualifying. 3 15-minute sessions, one for LMP2, LMP2 AM, that's coming up next. This is the LMP3 session. We've had the GT session, but the news is, as you can see with that little red marker above the stopped clock, stopped at 10:05, Garrett Grist, as you look at the temperature, 22 degrees. Doesn't matter now because all those cars are in the pits while they remove Garrett Grist from the racing line. Then we should see the rest of this qualifying session.
I'm surprised it's only 22 degrees, to be honest with you. It felt a bit warmer than that on the way through, but the wind coming through. But they're inside the Norma. And that's Colin Noble trying to just get a little bit more time to think through.
It's a good shot there of some of the in-car electronics that run these. These are highly technological cars that have come in.
And the old school track map, just to remind him where he is. You get all sorts of things, in terms of the way the drivers just want their environment to be. See that block there on the door? That is actually to help them with the kind of the head and helmet restraints.
Well, how about that? Closed door. I think we're about to start.
On a short call in about 45 seconds is what they're expecting. So he's getting ready just in case.
So
that
just
happens.
to clarify, Graham, Garrett Grist, that number 3 Norma M30 Nielsen Racing car, will not be taking part for this last 10 minutes.
I am 99% certain will not be allowed to rejoin because it was the cause of the red flag. So Colin Noble indeed has buttoned up the Norma. He's there just tucked in behind the bright yellow Ligier. Here comes the David Drew pedalled Graf car as well, waiting for the inter-Europol cars. And further back down the pit lane, the Vipanisa Racing Ligier gets underway now in the heat haze. So they're all going to go early. Just got one of the 2 inter-Europol cars. I think that's the 13 car that's being held for the moment.
So Colin Noble should be flying the flag, of course, fastest in those out laps, and very fast sector 2. That was the tricky one we were talking about. Very fast sector 1. He is the one that's going to be flying the flag for Nielsen Racing here, now that Garrett Grist is out. But let's just see what that early leader in the Shanghai race, Alessandro Bressan, can do.
Should say, by the way, one of the nice things here is the fans. You can see them there on the balconies of the main pit complex, and the welcome centre here, an extraordinary facility with amazing beautiful cars. This is their first time to see prototype racing if they've not left their homeland. And I've been spending some time on some of those balconies with a few fans, some young fans, much older fans, some even older than me, and I'm pretty darn old.
Is that possible?
It is possible. But I'm actually just reveling in the opportunity to see the cars they've only ever seen on TV. And that shouldn't be underestimated. We're here with the Asian Le Mans Series to draw together a fan base, and that doesn't look like it's proving to be a terrifically difficult task at the moment. Very different looking and sounding cars, that kind of low rumble we get from the Nissan V8s in these cars.
And these high-pitched, revving, cutting engines.
Then you get the Nissans we've got in the LMP2 AM cars, which are a little bit more screamy, and then we've got the hysterical 600 horsepower Gibson cars, which every time one of those blasted by, you'd look down the balcony and just a sea of grinning faces. They do love a big V8 here.
Absolutely. Now, but one thing I did want to talk about was in terms of the setup of these cars, you've got the GT cars, of course, that really do rely on the line of the corner. They've got a lot of weight moving around. These point-and-shoot prototypes, are you surprised that one of them stopped that? Are you surprised that they've stayed on track?
I was actually surprised that we saw a car off track. I mean, where these cars have got the strength of the GTs is through the turns. It's the aerodynamics of the cars.
Yeah.
Remember, two kinds of grip in a race car: mechanical grip, that is the tyre; aerodynamic grip, that's more or less everything else.
Yeah.
So that's why you've got the wings and the way in which the bodywork is shaped.
Aero package.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
The air that is managed through the car, under the car, over the car, that's the key to the success of these things, and that's where these little prototypes generate their performance compared to sometimes more powerful GT cars, you know, with more powerful engines, but fundamentally less aero.
Just a more efficient use of the environment.
It's basically the kick they get from the powertrain. These cars rather lighter, some 200 to 300 kilos lighter, but with much more advanced aerodynamics. And as we said again at the start of the show, whether it's a Norma, whether or not it's a Ligier, it's got the same powertrain, the same Nissan V8 engine, the same X-Track gearbox. They are supplied as a sealed unit from Orica. It's an organisation that we'll be getting familiar with in the next session as a chassis supplier, but they supply all of the LMP3 powertrains, whether or not it's a Ligier, whether or not it's a Norma, or whether or not in the coming weeks and months it's an Ades or a Ginetta, because they are going to be the four returning chassis suppliers.
The growth of LMP3. This car has been around now for about 4 years, but has been, as you said, hugely successful in all levels of the ACO racing.
I'll give you an idea. I mean, this Norma M30 is the newest of the four currently commercially available chassis in LMP3, and they've sold somewhere between 40 and 50 of these cars. The Ligier, which was I believe the third car to actually hit the track and the second car to compete after the original Ginetta, something over 110 of those cars now out there, and I think dozens of the replacement JSP 320 already sold by Jacques and Pierre Nicolet's operation.
Okay, well, we are now, as you can see, back underway. The outlaps just underway, or just being completed by 6 of the 7 cars. Garrett Grist from Nielsen Racing, as Graham pointed out, still out. So far, we have seen pretty fast Sector 2s on these outlaps, but of course, everyone's not just pushing it just yet. As you pointed out, Graham, there's going to be one flying lap at least in the middle of this 7-minute sector.
So we've seen what they can actually do. It's going to be sub 3-minute laps. There comes Brissan actually at the start there. So there's going to be 3 laps here if they want it, without a shadow of a doubt. There goes Brissan. Here comes Colin Noble. And these are going to be interesting sector times. I sort of wondered, did that allow Alessandro Brissan to get out of jail after that moment off track? The interesting thing here is going to be the comparative sector times between the quickest of the Ligiers, the quickest of the Normas, and whether or not there's been some dust, by the way, up outside the corner that Colin Noble's just come out. That could only be Brissan going a little wide again. He's clearly kept it on the island, but was it neat and tidy enough to be ultimately as quick as he wanted it to be? These guys are beginning to push here. But Brissan has gone through. It's a 40.479 for him. But Colin Noble is quicker in the first sector by some 0.2 of a second, 40.295. So better part of a quarter of a second to the good. It might well have been that moment through that turn that cost them. Beyond that, it's much of a muchness, 40.6s. In fact,
well, some abuse of track limits at turn 30. Never thought I'd ever say that in my racing career.
That is car 9. That is David Drew, and I think that was actually not his flying lap. So it wouldn't have been a time lap anyway. So it's not going to be he's not going to be penalised in terms of the lap he's on now. Lap 2 is the previous lap, the lap that we've just seen completed of the cars on the way out. So lap 1, their first out lap. Lap 2 isn't counted if they're on that to come into a red flag. So lap 2 becomes their second out lap. What we're looking at now is lap 3, and we're deep now into sector 2.
Things should be getting a little bit faster now.
So in terms of the times you'd expect to see, it's about 40 seconds in the first sector for an LMP3 car, minute and 5 minute and 6 for the second sector. They're coming through now, and again, Colin Noble is rather quicker. 1 minute 5.616 in that sector for Noble. Nobody else under 1 minute 6 at the moment, so it looks very much like Colin Noble is going to be going to a provisional pole position. If he keeps on the island, there's no reason to think that he won't at the end of sector 3. And we are under 5 minutes to the end of this session.
Well, that Nielsen Racing car finished 7th overall in Shanghai, 2nd in class. So it's going to be a good continuing standard of excellence for them if they can nail pole here.
They'll want a win without a shadow of a doubt, but consistent finishing, you know, and keeping doing that, whilst others maybe get a win and maybe have a bit of a bad day, might be the difference between a championship win and not. I'm sure, given the opportunity to choose, Colin Noble, Tony Wells, and Nielsen Racing team, as he comes through with a 2:52.959, significantly better. Sorry, that was Brissan's time. It's a 2:50.939 for Colin Noble.
That's really fast.
2 seconds almost to the 1,000th for Colin Noble. Nigel Moore comes through second. David Drew third. They take the championship win because, of course, with that comes a Le Mans entry for Nielsen Racing.
That's what it's all about.
Comes through. So 2:50.939 is the mark to beat. We're waiting for Douglas Koo to come through to complete the first round, and I think we're going to see 2 more laps for anybody else that wants them, with the exception of Douglas Koo, who is some
now
way
been
back.
reported, car 65, for speeding in the pit entry.
Pit entry. So
Yeah.
that must have been on his way in.
Yeah,
from the red flag.
From the red flag. So all sorts of regulations, race control, of course, in full effect. Eduardo Freitas watching every move, and in this case, while it's a little bit of an impediment for Douglas Koo and Viper Nisa Racing, they turn out, they do the best that they can. I'm sure they wouldn't have wanted that, but right now it's just been reported. There's actually been no punishment that has come out of it.
The reality is that's going to be a penalty because they're not reported unless they're sure. Purple sector 1, David Drew, third quickest at the moment, the Graf Racing number 9 car. But he's, what is that, 400th quicker than Colin Noble there. So it's tight margin. But so far, we've got David Drew looking like he could challenge for pole position. Looks to me like Garth Walden may have lost a lap here because he's not scored with a time. It is indeed car 14, loses its lap 3, so the 14 into Europol car does not get that lap time scored. So it's a 2:50.939 at the moment. Colin Noble improves his sector 2 time. He goes purple there. What can David Drew do? And the answer is does not improve. So at the moment, it looks to me like Colin Noble is going to extend his advantage. We've got a further lap deleted. It's car 13 this time. That is Nigel Moore, who is currently second quickest. So he's going to lose the lap that he's on. He will not improve, therefore, to Colin Noble. It gets better and better for Noble at the moment. So if Colin Noble can keep this lap together and put in a solid third sector, then the young Scot, a BRDC rising star, for those that follow British motorsport, the British Racing Drivers Club, keeping an eye on emerging talent, will put another notch on the CV, another pole position.
Which could be ever so important here, as we just talked about earlier, the limited overtaking opportunities you have. Pole might just be what you need.
So Alessandro Bressan goes through. He improves to third ahead of the Graf Racing car with a 2:52.343. But that is still, what's that, 1.5 seconds back from Noble, who improves again a 2:50.802.
He's loving it here.
He is indeed. David Drew, though, goes up to second. It's 1.1 second is the gap now. Drew is 0.3 of a second quicker than Nigel Moore, who will not improve on that lap. In fact, lifted off a little on that lap, knowing that he'd been pinged for track limits. Then it's Bressan, so it's Noble from Drew, Norma from Norma, Nielsen Racing from Graf, Nigel Moore, and then Alessandro Bressan, Ligier from Ligier into Europole competition 13 from the Ace 1 Valour Corsa car. Now we get a time from Garth Walden, a 2:54.961. Then Douglas Koo, some little way back, and still to complete his second flying lap. Of course, the 7th car in the order is the number 3 Nielsen Racing car. That bringing out the red flag will not rejoin the session.
And that brings us to under 15 seconds left on the official timing for the second qualifying session today here at the Bend Motorsport Park.
But importantly, all of these cars will get this current lap that they are on, and nothing more than that, because Douglas Koo does make it through to complete that lap.
But all in all, that's 4 laps completed in the qualifying session.
Absolutely, and we've got 2 cars together on track here. Now this is a good example of this is Nigel Moore, by the look of things, with David Drew. And David Drew is the quicker of the 2 here. Is he going to be held up by the 13 car? Or is Nigel Moore on a hurry up here? Drew just kicking up the dust to the right-hand side there, just as he came into shot. It looks to me as if anything, Alicia is going to hold him up here.
Well, one of the great benefits of having 3 qualifying sessions would, of course, be less cars on track for these guys to put flying laps in. But look, we have the situation of traffic.
Well, I think both of these guys are looking to improve. Looks to me like
It's absolutely wheel to wheel at the moment.
David Drew is not going to be happy with this, because he would have been looking for an opportunity, and now he's just, I think he brake tested him there a little. He did brake test him there a little.
So
that was David Drew basically saying, I'm not very happy with you, Sunshine. Colin Noble, meanwhile, has lifted off on this lap, feels he's done all he needs and probably all he can.
Probably has.
But
clear second faster.
I'm suggesting you might want to go anywhere near David Drew for about 20 minutes after this one. I don't think he's going to be very happy about what happened
look at
there.
that. Just huge. A couple of wheels out.
I think emotion getting the better of the Frenchman.
I think he's probably spending a lot more time looking at his mirrors right now.
Bressan goes up to second.
Well, how about that?
That could be very costly indeed for David Drew, because that might not have cost him just pole position. It might have cost him
as well
a front row finish. Now, I do wonder whether or not there might be Graf Racing team going to see, and then in comes the Graf Racing number 9. They go to Parc Fermé. If there's any further improvements there, so too does the number 13 car.
Once again, we've seen another qualifying session for the Asian Le Mans Series produce some really dramatic headlines, but also a little bit of RG in the middle of that.
I think that is the first Asian Le Mans Series pole position for Colin Noble. I don't recall him having a pole position last season, but Nielsen Racing done it. That's there could be no better example of a kind of session of 2 halves for a team, can there? One of the team's cars, the number 3 car, stopping out on track and bringing out the red flag, therefore
everything you could want in 15 minutes.
The other team's car to the top of the timing and scoring screens, and convincingly so. So it's a 1.1 second advantage to Colin Noble from what eventually turned out to be not David Drew, not Nigel Moore, but Alessandro Bressan. But what it does give us is a mix of chassis on the first 2 rows. Norma Ligier, Ligier. So it will be Colin Noble, the Nielsen Racing number 2 car, the 2 minutes 50.802. That's something like, what was that, 8-9 seconds quicker. That's 6 seconds quicker. 6 seconds quicker.
2:56.109
in the GTs. That's quite a comfortable gap, I think. If they get a clean start, that'll mean that the LMP3 cars should be fairly well clear. That was 1.1 seconds clear of Alessandro Bressan's best efforts right at the end of the session in the Ace 1 Valour course, the number 12, the bright yellow and black Ligier. David Drew, we saw at the end there, rather balked, and I think he would have good reason to be a little unhappy with the way that actually transpired. Rather balked by, I'm pretty certain that was the 13 of Nigel Moore. So David Drew, whilst trying to battle for pole, ended up actually losing his second place to the charging Alessandro Bressan. Then Nigel Moore in the 13 into Europol car at 2:52. So a pretty big spread. The gap, by the way, between second and third, between Bressan and Drew, was less than 300 a second. So it was a tight margin. And I think the happiest man there is going to be Colin Noble. By far the unhappiest man there is going to be David Drew.
The protocol surrounding Garrett Grist, now that he is not taking part in this qualifying session, didn't put in a flying lap. Where will he be starting on the grid tomorrow?
Where he'll be starting on the grid tomorrow will be at the back of the LMP3 grid. There could be a call made here by the race stewards. It might be at the very back of the grid.
Yes, that's what I was about to say.
What I would say is the drivers in that car, all three of the drivers in that car, have actually practiced around the circuit, so they will be allowed to start the race. Here comes Alessandro Bressan just into the pits to complete the session. That's the last car to make pit lane.
And it is really about logging in your fastest laps so that you can qualify for these things. Now, of course, Graham, LMP3 has been one of the most keenly contested classes at the Asian Le Mans Series. But again, we still have 4 events. Sepang coming up on the 15th of February. Buriram is the grand finale. Of course, night racing in Sepang is the next big thing to look at. But it really is important for each of these classes to set down a pretty good points tally by halfway, which is the end of this race.
Consistency is absolutely the key. We've seen this time and time again. Look, there are good sides and bad sides to having a spec powertrain in any race series. One of the good things is it does show the quality of the drivers, and it also gives the gentleman drivers the opportunity to test themselves against their peers as well. So people coming into LMP3 will have the opportunity to see how good they are against guys that they know have had a similar racing background to them, whether or not they're relatively inexperienced, whether or not they're looking to improve their skill set against their peers, whether or not they're looking to graze the kind of times that the pros have got. It's a real excellent start of the racing pyramid, and it's been a massively good servant to ACO World Racing, and I think it's going to continue that way when these new cars come in. Right now, these cars, they're cracking little cars. Everybody that gets aboard these things loves them. Their running costs are tiny compared to the LMP2s. We're going to go and have a look back at what was a rather disjointed 15 minutes of qualifying for the LMP3 cars around the 7.7 kilometres from here at the bend. Started in the sunshine with Vipanisa Racing getting away. Colin Noble there after the red flag, getting a bit of air into the car. The beautifully liveried number 65 car at the back of the queue as the cars emerge. This is for the first time. David Drew out in the number 9 Graf Racing car. One of the 3 Normers in the field. Alessandro Bressan dominated the early running in Shanghai, and he was out in the Ace 1 Valour Corsa car. It was, though, Colin Noble that put in a sterling performance after the red flag stoppage to put pole out of reach of the rest. The proud young Scotsman with the very Scottish-looking livery aboard the number 2 Nielsen Racing car. He would be on pole with a sparkling lap in the 2-minute 50s.
So Colin Noble takes pole in the LMP3 category of the 2:58.02, and that is added to, of course, that wonderful pole for Hub Auto Corso 2:56.109. Now we should be expecting 2:35s, 2:40s from the P2s.
Well, we've seen 2:35s already in free practice from the P2s. We've got 2 classes now on
LMP2
on deck.
and LMP2, yeah.
So the LMP2 AMs and LMP2s, and some changes here to talk about there. By the way, is our winners from the Shanghai opening race.
First ever win for Auris. It was literally a weekend of first for them.
Absolutely, but we've got, I should say, by the way, 1 fewer car in LMP2 this weekend.
That's right, K2 Chino will not be joining with the
Get well
Oracle.
soon, Haruka Kurosawa. He's okay, but advised by his doctor not to travel. That means, I'm afraid, we've lost the K2 Chino car.
And Sean Tong, who is the second driver there.
But we've gained the second Rickware Racing car. And so the 25 joins the 52 that had their logistical traumas, of course, you'll recall.
Yes, that was the big story from Shanghai. Rickware Racing, very excited to join the LMP2 AM category and take on ARC Bratislava. Had a nightmare in Shanghai, and the cars weren't delivered on time. Did manage to get one out in the end, but this time we've got the full complement.
And finished second. So there's lots of driver changes to talk about here. So we've got one and we lost one in this one, but it's a highly competitive LMP2 field. All of these cars, by the way, LMP2 cars, but from two different generations. The cars you're looking at there on screen from the top of the pit building, the 52 and the 25 we've just been talking about. We'll talk about those drivers when they're out on track. These are the pre-2017 cars. These are the P2 AM cars now. These are the older generation of P2 cars. 3 Ligier JSP2s, they were 2 of them. 1 Oreca 05. All in this instance powered by the Nissan V8 engine. They've been so familiar to endurance racing fans for many, many years. And then up front, we've got the remainder of the field, the 6 Gibson 4.2-litre V8 powered cars, 3 different chassis. The Dallara we've got coming through shot now from the Thunderhead Carlin team. There is the ARC Bratislava JSP2, that's LMP2 AM car. 2 of the Ligier JSP 217s, both Gibson engine cars, and plenty of things to say about these teams as well in just a moment or two. So 600 horsepower, closing in on something like 300 kilometers per hour at the end of this 1 kilometer start-finish straight. But 235s already in the books for a number of these teams.
Right, James French came up with a 235.418 free practice
and,
G-Drive.
And it will be I reckon we'll be in the 234s for the quick guys here. Let's have a look at who's going to be out in these cars. Out already on track, Rick Ware racing car. Guy Cosmo returning star in the Asian Le Mans Series. Previously, of course, LMP3
Autosports,
champion. United Autosports was back last year with a race win in LMP2 AM for United Autosports. He's back and hopes to complete the season in the 25 car. Roman Rusinov, race winner last time, is out there in his entry, the 26 G-Drive racing by Algarve. John Corbett, Australian driver, proud of it, in the 33 Inter-European Endurance P2 entry. It's gone at Patterson, the local boy in the ARC.
Right. Adelaide, homegrown driver.
He is our local Adelaidean, I believe they're called. Matthias Besch, a star in LMP2 and LMP1. He's out there in the 34 Inter-Europol Ligier. Roberto Merri, ex-Manor F1 driver.
Pole position from Shanghai.
Absolutely, and rode here from Adelaide, 120 kilometres on his bike.
Oh my Lord.
Which means he's mad. And that was, by the way, on the day we had 40-degree heat. Ben Barnicoat, who was storming along in free practice, is aboard the 45 Thunderhead Carlin Racing Dallara. Gustas Grimbergus, we'll talk about the flying teenager in just a moment from Lithuania.
Yep.
Is out in the 52.
Very fast Arjun Maini.
Absolutely, Arjun Maini, another star. And not yet out on circuit is the number 1 car, the star-studded Team New Zealand, or rather Eurasia Racing.
We were all expecting Shane Van Gisbergen now.
I'm sure he will be, and let's hope there's not a problem there. Change for this car, we've already seen. And the thing we can see that's a change is a change of livery, and that's the yellow for Eurasia Racing Australia. And Roberto Merri it is that joins 2 Australian drivers, Aidan Reid and Nick Foster, aboard the Gibson-engined Ligier.
Now, this car was really set the headlines on fire in Shanghai, of course, with Roberto Merri's amazing pole position, but then all 3 drivers were fighting nicely. Aidan Reid and Nicholas Foster. Nick Foster, of course, had his moustache back then as well. But they were all fighting very well. Yeah, that's all you're going to say about that one. Well, the general consensus is he's going to go faster without it now.
The general consensus is he did look ridiculous, but Nick is a sparklingly quick
and
car.
Very fast.
Very fast in GT car, and I think he surprised himself how quick. Oh, and off the 34 car.
Well.
Now that was Matthias Besch, wasn't it? It was Matthias Besch. So Besch
it
pushing.
always seems to be around that corner.
So Matthias Besch, bit of an error there. That will take a while for him to clean up the Michelins on that car. These aren't the flying laps yet, remember?
No, just still increasing, should we say? They're out laps.
But now,
and just to
actually, sorry, that was his flying lap. He was on his flying lap. My apologies. So Ben Barton, that's cost him a good couple of seconds in that sector. So that's ruined his first flying lap. Ben Barnicoat has come through and is quickest at the moment in sector 1. He's the one that's gone purple. Quicker than Roberto Merri, quicker than Roman Rusinov, and of course, because of that error, quicker than Matthias Besch as well. And of course, the other thing that
Track limits.
yes, through the power of the messages from race control, I'm reminded by Eduardo Freitas, not only does that ruin his time, it was track limits, so he won't get that lap anyway.
But it's got to be difficult on a track like this to not abuse track limits in certain areas. With the power, the camber, the undulations, the gradients.
But these are professional drivers, and that is the game, and there's a good reason why that's the game. There's a puff of dust as well. It is a very dusty track, this, by the way. Very exposed out here, quite flat.
Oh,
that's a big...
that Dallara has just not just abused track limits, it's created its own track by the looks of it.
It's all right, Eduardo will never notice that.
Never.
I'm sure that won't come up in race control at all. But no, that was... if that had been a rallycross thing, that would have been the Joker lap, without a shadow of a doubt. But that will be some very messy Michelins now for Ben Barnicoat.
And general, a lot of pickup from underneath the car.
And he just put in a sparkling second sector time as well. So that throws these things open. And this now looks like a battle between Roberto Merri and Roman Rusinov for bragging rights. Let's have another look at that 45 car. What happened here?
Have a look at that again.
Oh,
well,
he's lost
already
it
off.
through the exit of the turn, and off he goes.
Let's look at the back of that car shaking.
Did well to keep that out of the wall, actually. Did well to keep that one out of the wall.
Yeah, absolutely. Could have been a lot worse.
Yeah, that was, I think, a little overzealous from Ben Barnicoat. He'd gone quickest in sector 1 and trouble for the 4. Trouble at the 4. This is Garnet Patterson in the number 4 car.
And that's not from a flag by the looks of it. We would have seen it. We would have seen it. So
it's a red
he's
flag.
slowed down.
It's a red
flag.
flag.
Oh, it is another red flag session. Okay, we were just about to mention we hadn't seen a flag yet, and we preempted that pretty well. So a red flag in LMP3, a red flag in the LMP2 qualifying as well. That's bound to be, well, of course, Ben Barnicoat didn't stop. The Dallara now in the pits, but they're going to be checking the track.
Now, they're being told, leave the car alone, it's a red flag.
Wow, there's all sorts of regulations and protocol, as you can imagine, around these qualifying sessions. They are so important to the whole weekend. And if something does go wrong...
Red flag, I believe it means it is effectively a parc fermé situation for the cars. So they might well be getting a penalty for that. So Alan Tanier it is. It's the hugely experienced pit lane marshal for the ACO.
And the clock has been stopped at 9:50. Now, as we know it, as the reports that are coming into our commentary box right now, we haven't actually been able to identify an incident on track
that has led to this. It's possible there's some debris. It's possible there's some debris.
From the Dallara.
Maybe from the Dallara. It might be that there's so much muck at a critical point that Eduardo Freitas has decided. He's got a couple of cars off track. What you don't want in the critical braking area is for there to be so much muck on track and you're going to have a major incident. So it might be that it's just that. We've got 2 cars still to join us. Still haven't seen, by the way, the number 1 Ligier, Shane van Gisbergen, Nick Cassidy and Daniel Gaunt.
We have to imagine that's something to do with the setup of the car. Now, the clock has been stopped.
There is the black number 1 car.
Oh, yeah.
Now, it may well be they were just waiting. So
for a final run-in. Well, they're going to have to wait a bit longer now. Clock has been stopped at 9:50.
It has.
A 9 minutes 50 session will restart on a short call. That's what we understand. And, well, it's not unexpected to see this, of course, but there's going to be no difference in terms of braking. This really is about a mental situation for the drivers to get to sit in those cars, not overheat, realize what they have to do in a very short amount of time when they come back.
Let's wait for the word from Eduardo Freitas as to what we're going to see in terms of track action restarting.
And just to keep you, while we have the time, of course, just to get you up to speed with exactly where we are in LMP2 and LMP2AM, was a fantastic win for G-Drive Racing by Algarve in that opening round, late November in Shanghai. And they were followed, of course, by Eurasia Motorsport. They were jumped up into second spot because of the penalty, driving time penalty that was handed out to Thunderhead Carlin Racing for the man that's actually in the car right now, Ben Barnicoat. In LMP2AM, well, that was tragedy for ARC Bratislava. They led for, I think it was 77 laps before they had to retire, and that, of course, gave the win to RLR M Sport. It was Arjun Mainy's team there that came through in the Orica 05 to top that. And remember, ARC Bratislava defending champions.
It led to a dream finish, really, for the
Yes,
52 car.
fantastic,
Because,
it's fantastic.
having not stepped into that car before the race, they were given some laps of practice. Cody Ware and Mark Van, who's not with the team here, by ARC Bratislava, which gave them the opportunity to even start the race, and they profited mightily from that and came
remember,
away with second place.
Garnet Patterson, the Adelaidean, as you pointed out, hometown driver, is replacing a very fast driver for ARC Bratislava, Kang Ling,
He is
this
indeed.
this weekend.
Green flag, and
Well, back up.
first out is the reliveried RLRM Sport car. And by the way, the livery on that car here supporting the efforts of
The Australian firefighters for
absolutely,
the bushfires that are still raging.
That's right, and our best wishes to them and all the other emergency services, and for that matter, the voluntary services. I know you want to say something a little
Yes.
later about
Yep.
the Asian Le Mans Series support for the Red Cross efforts there, and more than that, to everybody who is affected by these terrible occurrences throughout this beautiful nation. The world is weeping with you. Can we just say that for a moment? It is terrible to see this, and we hope that you get the rains that you're very much hoping for.
Very much need, it's true.
But back to track action, 8.5 minutes on the clock. One of the downsides, I guess, in terms of televisually, this length of track is it takes a while before we get into the competitive lap times, and particularly if you do get a red flag there. I do quite like that livery on the car, the yellow.
It is.
It also means we're not going to confuse it this time with the G-Drive car. A little bit of black and orange clash last time
That's
around.
true. Copper, I think, was the word we used.
That's
Yeah.
a good call. That's a good call. It's John Ferrano, the owner of this car. This is the one remaining active Orica 05, one's dominant in world sports car racing.
Yeah, it was the
LMP2.
K2. Chino had the Orica 07. The Auris, of course, the rebranded
Indeed.
Orica in there.
But the 05,
A special car.
it's a very special car. Won so many races, so many championships. Where it's suffered in terms of its longevity is the fact that you can upgrade a 05 to a 07, which means almost all the 05s are now 07s. There are only, I believe, 4 remaining. 2 in private collections, the 2 race-winning cars from KCMG,
Yeah.
another ex.
That's right,
Indeed,
KCMG.
another ex-Asian Le Mans Series
Josh
championship
Burton
winning.
and
Absolutely.
crew.
But puff of smoke there I saw in the foreground from somebody.
I think that was just a clip on the curb.
And the other one is one of the significant Alpine cars, and there's a display car as well that's displayed as a G-Drive car, but this is the only active 05 left. This is Garnet Patterson back out in the number 4 car. We thought for a moment there was a problem for that car, but it seems that was just to do with the red flag. I'm guessing that's going to be to do with debris.
And there's nothing we can really say. Really, the outlaps that they all put in are not representative of what's going to be happening. This last 6 minutes here of qualifying, once again, just to recap, the GT qualifying, 2:56.109 for Haboto Corsa. LMP3, Colin Noble with his first pole with a 2:50.802. This the third in the new format of qualifying for the Asian Le Mans Series. LMP2 and LMP2 AM stopped again for a red flag. Unknown as to why right now, probably debris. 6 minutes left, 6 minutes of high action, high octane racing.
And we can hear the cars going by us now to start their flying laps, 6 minutes and 20 seconds or so.
Rick Ware.
Yeah, absolutely. The number 1 car, by the way, has joined the session. It's not Shane van Gisbergen, but Nick Cassidy. Now, if you're not familiar with Nick Cassidy, you possibly should be. This is his first run out with the LMP2 car. Nick is the reigning Super Formula champion in Japan. That is one of the most highly contested single-seater championships on the planet. Lots of works backing there and some big name drivers. He's also a previous champion for the previous year in Super GT, one of the most highly contested sports car championships on the planet.
Versatile.
So what it makes him is one of the most versatile, beautifully worded there, drivers in the world, alongside another one who's a bit like that, a man who's won in GT cars, has won in touring cars, in a particular kind of touring cars, the Aussie V8s, that's Shane van Gisbergen.
Yeah.
And what a delight it is for motorsport fans to see the two of them together
Both in the same team.
in one car, alongside Daniel Gaunt, who's no mean driver himself, by the way. Number 1 car needs a good hard look, not just here in qualifying, but for the remainder of the weekend.
And of course, for them, this is their qualifying session has just started. That red flag just did not affect them at all.
No, absolutely not. Absolutely not. So looking now at the emerging times, as we've got the Thunderhead Carling car slightly late to the party there. No one as quick as Ben Barnicoat had been in the first sector. That doesn't matter because he didn't complete that lap. So look, it's really tight in terms of first sector times. And I'm just looking to see who's the quickest. Matthias Besch, by a distance, is the quickest at the moment. So everybody in the 39s, with the exception of Matthias Besch and now Roman Rusinov in the 37s. So two cars going very much quicker than the rest in that first sector.
Well, Nick Cassidy just put in a 37 as well.
There you go. So Nick Cassidy, I think, is going to be contesting pole as well. That's no surprise to anyone that knows the quality of the Kiwi. In LMP2 AM, John at Patterson, not quite as quick at the moment. Well, it's not Philippe Minucek, I can tell you that, because Philippe is not going to be racing. I'm guessing that's going to be Guy Cosmo. So just to update listeners, viewers, on the 25 car. So the Rickway Racing team will see Guy Cosmo, who is the returning ex-LMP3 champion here and race winner last year in LMP2 AM, joined by Anthony Lazzaro.
From the US.
From the US. And Anthony Lazzaro, by the way, is the only driver in the field that took part in the race of 1,000 years, 20 years ago in the streets of Adelaide.
That was the standout piece of information that you delivered to me today. There's a man that is actually linked. We did say at the top of the program the last time Le Mans was in Australia was on the Adelaide Street Circuit, December 31st, year 2000. That was Alan McNish, your commentating partner.
Never heard of him. Never heard of him.
on a number of championships. He won that in an Audi R8, but it seems that one of the drivers here, Anthony Lazzaro, was here.
He was.
And finished on the podium.
He did finish on the GT podium in a BMW. Time's coming through now. Matthias Besch goes to the top and is the first of the top class cars to complete a flying lap of 2:36.772. Behind him, though, all four LMP2 AM cars have now completed a flying lap, and they're pretty closely spaced. It's 2:43.235 for Arjun Maini, ahead of Garnet Patterson, who is, 7/10ths back. Then it is, I believe that's Guy Cosmo, who's just a 10th or two ahead of young Gustas Grimberger, 17-year-old Gustas from Lithuania. LMP3 racer in the European Le Mans Series this year, got the call at the beginning of the week as the RLR car is going slowly out there. Might just have been letting the car go, but that was going very slowly indeed, too slowly for my liking. And Gustas Grimbergus, the one moan he's had all week is that by the time he actually got to the airport, he was basically buying a walk-up fare, and that wasn't cheap, it's got to be said. Roberto Merri, by the way, puts in the fastest first sector of the session so far. 2:35.698, by the way. Ben Barnicoat makes amends for that error earlier.
Quite a sizable error.
But that's 2:35.698. That's much the quickest time we've seen so far. And looking for where the next most telling time is going to come. I'm looking at Roberto Merri. I'm looking at Nick Cassidy, who's popped up into third. He's not as quick in the first sector as Ben Barnicoat on the time. Besch was just edged Besch out now. But where is Roberto Merri's second sector time? I think around the minute mark, possibly a little better for a really truly competitive time.
And all these 10 competitors running out of time now. 1:15. Oh, look at that. That looks,
cars.
one of the Rickways is out at the same place.
It's exactly the same place. Roberto Merri is under the minute. Might well have been slightly stymied there with both the RLR car slightly slow and would have likely come into a yellow flag zone as well. Hopefully was in the zone as the flags came out and will not have had to lift too much. But Roberto Merri's attack will have been slightly stumped. We've got just under a minute to go here. He might just get around to start one more flying lap here,
which would be counted regardless of the clock if he started it.
I think that was Gustas Grimberger, by the way, that had the problem there.
But currently, once again, that Thunderhead Carling Racing solo Dallara P217 seems to be trumping the rest of the pack.
These times are not as quick as I think people were expecting, to be honest with you. And I think that the disjointed nature of the session will be one of them.
Yeah.
But it might just be the conditions slightly cooler than everybody expected. The 2:35.698 it is. That's a second clear of Matthias Besch. Ben Barnicoat and the Inter-Europol car, by the way, is pitted to be no improvement from Matthias Besch. There will, I think, be an improvement from Nick Cassidy. But is it going to be big enough to actually
There is Rick Ware Racing.
It was the 52 car, by the way. It was the 52 car. Augustus Grimberger's had a bit of an off there.
No, G-Drive has finished their session. RLR Sport looks...
Rusinov goes to second. Nick Cassidy goes to second, and it's just 2/10 off pole. So it's 2:35.698 for the Dallara, 2:35.87 over Nick Cassidy. He takes the checkered flag with that lap. 2:36.711 for Roman Rusinov. Very briefly was up into second position overall, but drops back into third. Eurasia with Roberto Meri. He came through with a 2:37.262, but he didn't take the checkered flag, but has lifted off. So there was an opportunity to improve, but it's not going to be taken by Roberto Meri. It's going to be the Thunderhead Carlin boys and Ben Barnicoat that takes pole position here at the Bend.
Well, that is, it's significant that Ben Barnicoat was the driver that, of course, received that penalty for staying in the car for too long in Shanghai. That Thunderhead Carlin Racing team that really thought that they had the win now have a chance to put all those memories behind them and, well, register a win here. The first win at the Bend. They've got the pole. Let's see, that's 1 point, of course, in terms of the standings. And Eurasia Motorsport and G-Drive, the other two cars that were involved in that top three in Shanghai, right behind them.
We've not yet, by the way, had confirmation of the pole sitter in LMP2AM because there's 3 cars still out there on competitive lap times. At the moment, it's Arjun Miney's 2:43.235 they've got to try to hit. The closest to that is the number 4 ARC Bratislava car. That at the moment is on a pretty competitive lap, as is Guy Cosmo in the 3rd place car from Rick Ware Racing. As for them, actually not at the moment. So Gustav Grimberger has lifted off. The other 2 completing this lap, and I think they are still on flying laps here, could still grab pole position, and I think we're due to see them through any time now.
All cars have been...
Guy Cosmo has opted not to complete that lap. Garnet Patterson may. He's due across the line any moment now, but he'll be looking at his delta time, and can he make it? No, he's going to pit as well. He was seen on his delta time.
Things winding up here in the LMP2 P2AM category. That is the car there, the Dallara, that has topped the list and is looking set for another great weekend.
Indeed, they were very convincing indeed in Shanghai, and convincing again here in the sunshine at the Bend. So whilst a torrid year in the European Le Mans Series for this team, it's been an altogether happier hunting ground for the Thunderhead Carlin car. But a 45 car with Ben Barnicoat.
And we're just going to look back now at some of the incidents.
Action, around the track. The 25 car, there's the 52 car there. '25 car. Now, was that track limits, I wonder?
I think it's...
It's a Guy Cosmo aboard that car.
Just to have a look at the track limits there, but we have been saying that is been affecting all the classes today.
We said at the start of the show, this is a really tricky place to learn. That's a very happy Ben Barnicoat. Why shouldn't you be, young man? It's been very, very good in this car. A mistake in the first part of the session
didn't seem to affect them. Now I know, Graham, you've been you love your chassis. You love your chassis. Ligier probably the most prevalent one, but this Dallara P217 is an interesting car.
4 LMP2 options available to teams. We've got the Riley Multimatic, and actually Rick Ware Racing are looking to run an IMSA this year, but otherwise is more or less not there. We've got the Ligier that has had serious numbers out there, but no longer, and the Dallara. Orica utterly dominating. Utterly dominating in terms of the numbers, and looking to do so even more moving forward. Let's go down to talk to our pole setter down in pit lane from the Thunderhead Carlin 45 team in the Dallara. We've got Nadia Nash looking forward, I'm sure, to talking to pole setter Ben Barnicoat.
Yes, the man of the moment right here. We'll see him at the front of the grid tomorrow. Ben Barnicoat, how did you do that, and how was it?
Yeah, I mean, it was a bit of an eventful session on my first run. Made a mistake in turn 25. During that session, the track temp was much higher than practice. I think that's what caught me out, really, just a little bit less grip. But you know, it's qualifying. We're all going out there to be fastest. And then, in some ways, the red flag saved me a little bit because I didn't cause it. Someone else caused it, but that stopped some of the other drivers from improving. Then we went again on the second set of tyres. Car was good, like I said, a bit tricky with the higher track temp, but managed to get the lap done. I actually felt the first lap before the red flag was a little bit better, but at the end of the day, we got pole, so very, very happy with that. Big thank you to Thunderhead Carlin, great car.
Congratulations, you did great, and we can't wait to see you tomorrow. So that was Ben Banico in the Dallara for you for Thunderhead Carling Racing.